Serious, what's the creepiest true story that happened to you or someone you know? I just moved into a basement suite. Every time I went out I would lock the deadbolt, but not the door handle, but when I came home a lot of the time the deadbolt would be unlocked and the door handle would be locked. At first I thought I was just confused about which one I had locked, so I started paying more attention. It kept happening, and I realized someone must be going in when I went out. I assumed it was the landlady and was annoyed, but didn't say anything at first. Then one day I came home and found the wrong lock locked again. I went in pissed off and opened the fridge to get something to eat. There was a book in the fridge that I had never seen before. I collected old books and this one was published in the early 1900s, which creeped me out completely because it was like it had been left for me. I finally called my landlady and asked if she was going into my apartment and told her what had happened. She freaked right out, said the last person who lived there was a really creepy guy with mental health and drug problems. She got all the locks changed that day and it never happened again. Didn't realize until years later that I was almost snatched. Grew up in a small town. Out playing in the yard with my two younger siblings like every other summer day. Guy pulls up alongside the yard in a truck, calls me over. Asks my name, if I'm having a good summer. He says he could really use my help, he's out looking for his lost puppy. He can show me a photo of the puppy if I come closer. No, closer. The picture is small, can I please help him? I yelled to my brother on the other side of the yard, Ian, come help us find a puppy. I have to assume he thought I yelled dad because he nope screeched out of there without another word. I remember being really worried about that puppy until we had an assembly at our primary school about things strangers might say to lure you into their vehicles. I was in the grocery store one time and I walked by a scruffy guy probably in his 50s talking to a young girl. I had earphones on and couldn't catch what they were saying, but about 3 minutes later the guy sprinted past me, ran out of the store and drove away in his pickup truck in about 15 seconds. I looked back behind me and the girl was confused while her mother was sobbing and hugging her very tightly. Into similar story. I was with my girlfriend at the time chilling in the basement garage listening to music, having drinks. I go up to the kitchen looking for my phone, but can't find it. I had a few drinks, so I must have misplaced it somewhere, no biggie. Anyhow, I see my GF's phone was charging, so I pick it up to check the time. I then go back down to the basement garage. Later on the night, she goes up to the kitchen upstairs looking for her phone, but she can't find it. Anyhow, we both go upstairs, we both had a few drinks and end up going to bed. Next morning, I'm looking for my phone, she's looking for her phone, but we can't find them, weird, since I had seen her phone the night before. Then I notice my watch is not where I left it, she looks outside to the backyard and sees her purse and my work computer lying on the grass, WTF. It then hit us that someone had actually entered the house while we were downstairs in the basement garage, and not only that, they were actually hiding when I came up to get my phone, since I had checked hers and it was missing the morning after. Goes without saying that I changed all locks, put motion detection lights in the backyard and put a locked fence. One thing is to rob, but another is to be robbed while you are in the house. My family were driving on the rural main road of Poland, we're Polish, and next to our car was this truck delivering large concrete pipes. We drove next to this truck for maybe an hour, maybe two. I was a teenager so I didn't really care. My dad figures we stop at the next gas station for a quick toilet break. As I exit the car, a pair of bikes drive past the gas station. I noticed because it was loud as fuck. Pep over and we go back on the road. About a mile or so down the road there's an accident. The bikes had caught up with the truck and as they were about to drive past it, the large concrete pipes fell off the truck and smushed the bikers. Maybe they weren't fastened properly or the truck swerved. I'm not sure, but they were dead. Blood everywhere. I still have a hard time thinking of what could have happened. My mom and her friend were out and about late at night, heading to a party. Their car broke down, and being a rural town with a small population, they had to walk about a mile to the nearest house for help. They got to the front door, and of all people to answer the door, it was one of their high school teachers. He was horrified to see them out late at night, alone. He let them use his phone, but scolded them saying it was not safe. The location, time and circumstances, he let them know they were absolute fools, and heeded a somewhat vague warning. My mom called my grandfather to come bring gas and or possibly tow their vehicle. When the girls got back to their car, there was a severed cow head on the hood, blood everywhere. This was near Hermiston, or, apparently well known for devil worshippers. When I was about 9 or 10, my older brother and I had a few friends over to stay the night. My dad had to work the next day so we were all left at the house by ourselves for the day. We were excited to play PlayStation all day on our Saturday off. Well, my dad worked late that night until probably 8 or 9. As soon as the sun went down we went into one of the rooms upstairs to play Uno. Fast forward 30 minutes and we start hearing footsteps slowing walking up the wooden stairs. My dad wasn't going to be home for another 2 hours so we didn't know who it was. There were 4 of us, me, my brother, my friend and his friend. We would take turns walking out of the room to see what it was, but before we could look down the dark stairs, we would hear what sounded like someone running down the stairs as fast as they could so they couldn't be seen. This continued for probably 2 hours, ending with all of us huddled in the room upstairs with the door wedged shut with a chair until my dad got home. None of us were really believers in anything paranormal, but a child's imagination is a crazy thing. Now 15 years later, I still don't know what to make of it, but every one of us heard those footsteps walking up those dark stairs. I bring it up to my friend who I'm still friends with, and he remembers it just as vividly as I do. It kind of creeps me out just thinking about it. I was walking home from the beach one day around noon, and a guy driving down the street in a Ford Escape slows down and in slightly broken English asks me how much. I tell him to fuck off, and he tells me $200 for an hour. At this point I'm walking faster and his car is keeping pace with me. He crosses 2 lanes and parks in a driveway in front of me and opens his door, and the passenger door opens as well. Another guy steps out and walks towards me. I start screaming my head off and cussing them out, trying to draw attention on this busy street while fishing my knife out of my bag. I walk into the street and around the car, call my boyfriend and tell them it's the cops. I give my boyfriend their license plate number and almost run to his house because it was about a block away. They followed me for another minute and then drove past me really fast while calling me a fucking cunt. I was 16 at the time, and I really wish I had called the cops because as an adult I am 100% sure I was about to be kidnapped and raped. When I was younger my dad was out of town, and my mom let me have a few friends over. We lived right by a pretty busy highway, and over their years had quite a few people knock on our door for help, car broke down, lost accident, etc. While my mom was home with us, a man knocked saying he wanted to borrow the phone. My mother told him he could sit on the porch and use her cell phone. The man kept asking to come inside and asking if my dad was home. He eventually started trying to force his way inside. My mom slammed and locked the door, called 911, and put my friends and I into a closet. It took the police department 20+ minutes to reach us. By that time my mom had called our neighbor and he came over his shotgun and made the guy lay on the ground until the police arrived. My wife and I rented an old townhouse in Birmingham, Al, about 10 years ago. It was spooky for no other reason other than it was old and in the woods. We are both suburban Californians, so this was enough to freak us out a little. We used to joke that there was a presence in the house, but after a while we started experiencing strange things. When you would leave the kitchen, after grabbing a snack, all the cabinets would be closed, but if you returned a few minutes later, all of the cabinets would be wide open. Freaky, but just annoying. Later on things escalated. My wife would come home late after roller derby practice, and we had very steep steps that led up to our door. Being the considerate husband that I would be sure to turn on the porch light so she wouldn't trip. Something often would turn the light back off, old style breaker switch on the wall, had to put some force behind flipping it. This caused my wife to one seriously trip coming to the door late at night. My wife complained often that she felt unsafe when I was working late and she was alone, and we began to realize whatever was in the house didn't like her specifically. Walking to the bathroom late at night and passing the hall mirror, we both spotted a disfigured woman in the reflection. I thought I was hallucinating when I first saw it, but after a few times of it occurring I mentioned it to my wife, who freaked out and told me she had seen the same thing too in the past. Over the next year or so I would sometimes have nightmares about the woman I had seen and would wake up next to my wife and would jostle around. A few times this would wake my wife too, and she would respond, "Go back to sleep, it's just a dream." I saw her too. The pinnacle of the event was late one night. My wife came home and started screaming at me for no apparent reason, leveling nonsensical accusations and just being mean. I was in the middle of writing a paper due the next morning, so I told her I was not going to deal with and she should go to bed. She turned off all the lights except in the downstairs den where I was working and went upstairs to bed. An hour later I finished my paper and went to bed. When I got to the bottom of the stairwell leading to our bedroom, I turned on the light and was shocked to see my wife sitting at the top of the stairs in what had been the complete dark. She just stared down at me, and I swear to God her eyes were completely black and her strawberry blonde hair had been bleached completely white. I was scared more than I've ever been in my life, but slowly walked up the stairs to her. When I got to the top her eyes and hair turned normal and she began sobbing, saying that something was attacking her and she was filled with hate. We held each other through the night. And talked about it several times after. My wife is convinced she was possessed. I believe she was as well. We live in California again and have been married for 8.5 years. Nothing has ever happened like that again. When I was around 14 years old, I really liked to go for runs with my Shepherd X Lab. I lived in a fairly quiet, clean suburban neighborhood that was situated beside a broad expanse of pasture used by about 10 horses. I would say it was roughly 40 acres. Anyway, a bike path ran between the pasture and my neighborhood, and I generally ran down the path. One night I decided to go with my pup around 10 p.m. May not seem like the smartest decision, but I had spent many nights with my group of friends biking, rollerblading around the neighborhood, so I thought nothing of the late hour. I was running down the bike path with my dog, who is a big pup, yet the friendliest guy you'll meet. As we ran I noticed a dark lump a little ways ahead, and because it was nearly pitch black I could barely see it. I dismissed it as a garbage bag. As we drew closer, my dog perked up his ears and his hackles went up, and he started to growl, which he rarely ever does. He loves basically everything. I stopped running and stared as the garbage bag started to move. 14-year-old me still didn't really know what the heck I was looking at, and it wasn't until the supposed garbage stood up that I realized it was a man who then started to run towards us. My dog then turned around and, I kid you not, started to run and yanked me along behind him. We reached a street, he darted down it, then pulled me into a dark alley, onto another street, then another alley, then another street, until we somehow lost the guy. My dog saved my life, I'm pretty sure. The guy may not have been an axe murderer, but it turns out some creepy ex-felon was arrested in our neighborhood about 2 days later. About 5 years ago I was at a friend's house drinking about 3 AM, we ran out so I rode my bike back to my house 5 blocks away and grabbed some and got on the bike to ride back. When I got about 2 blocks down I saw a car crossing the street. When whoever was driving saw me they slowed down and stopped on the side of the street as if to wait on me to ride that way. I had a horrible feeling about it for some reason, so I just pulled up to the house I was in front of and pretended it was mine, walked up to the front door like I was going inside. When I did that I noticed the car leave from where they were pulled over. I waited for a bit and then headed back to my buddies and forgot about it. The next day it was all over the news that a car matching the one I saw 2 streets over from where I saw them at 3:30 AM pulled out in front of another car and blocked them in and proceeded to shoot and kill everyone in the car. Apparently it was a thrill kill.